Moscow awakens to chaos as 370 drones slice through the dawn sky. Sirens wail, glass towers blaze, and explosions ripple across the city's heart. A sudden storm of fire and steel that turns morning calm into a battlefield. Dawn broke over Moscow in a haze of smoke and disbelief. The once silent skyline pulsed with orange light as waves of drones struck at breathtaking speed, shattering the illusion of safety in the Russian capital. Civilians poured out of office buildings, faces pale with terror, as sirens wailed and the city's power grid flickered in and out of life. Across Ukraine, in Lviv, Russian missiles rained down before sunrise, 26 cruise projectiles tearing through the sky, leaving hospitals and homes engulfed in flames. A maternity clinic collapsed into rubble and ash. 8 lives extinguished beneath the roar of war. In the aftermath, chaos reigned. 2,400 people were forced from their homes as Ukraine's air defenses strained under relentless attack. Though 70% of missiles were intercepted, the remaining explosions paralyzed 2 provinces for nearly 2 days. From afar, the towers of Moscow's financial district, once symbols of might and wealth, stood cloaked in black smoke, their windows glowing red with fire. As the sun climbed higher, Moscow's vast infrastructure began to crumble. Power lines sparked, plunging entire districts into eerie darkness. The city's metro ground to a halt mid-tunnel, trapping commuters underground. Fire crews fought their way through twisted steel and broken concrete, their radios filled with static as communication networks fell silent. Even Moscow's vaunted S-400 and S-500 radar systems remained blind, registering no warning of what had just happened. The drones, flying barely 10 meters above the ground, slipped past radar undetected. Built from plywood and carbon fiber, each cost less than $2,000, yet together they brought a superpower's capital to its knees. On encrypted channels, 2 chilling words flashed before the signal faded. Asterisk asterisk. Silent thunder asterisk asterisk. Russian interceptors fired wildly, hitting decoys while the real swarm pressed forward, unseen and unstoppable. Through the choking smoke, the air reeked of burnt transformers. Traffic lights blinked out. In distant Lviv, the night sky fractured again as missiles and drones ignited more homes and schools, their shockwaves blowing out windows and cutting off entire neighborhoods. Ukrainian medics crawled through debris, dragging survivors from the ruins of what had once been a clinic. Grief turned to fury in Kyiv. NATO voiced concern, but in underground bunkers across Ukraine, engineers and coders were already drafting plans for revenge. Asterisk asterisk. Operation Silent Thunder. Asterisk asterisk had only begun. A young team of drone operators and programmers worked with recycled parts to build 370 UAVs, each carrying a small but devastating 2-kilogram payload. They wrote adaptive code that allowed the drones to navigate rivers, forests, and radar shadows autonomously. 6 squadrons prepared to launch a living, self-adjusting storm guided not by pilots, but by algorithms. When the drones struck Moscow's substations, 4 critical energy hubs went dark in seconds. Soon after, telecom towers failed, cutting Russian command centers off from their own defense grids. Emergency systems overloaded, and Moscow's metro trapped more than 1,600 people underground. Hospitals switched to backup generators, their fuel dwindling fast. In the command bunkers, Russian officers stared at blank radar screens, realizing that their $500 billion defense system had been outwitted by wooden drones. In the Carpathians, Ukrainian engineers tested 18 prototypes, landing each within 10 meters of its intended target. When success flashed across the monitors, they silently cheered. At dawn, 6 launch sites across Ukraine came alive. Drone engines hummed like distant insects as the swarm took flight, a storm of precision and code. On Moscow's radar, the swarm appeared only as faint static, dismissed by operators as background noise. By the time they understood, it was too late. 240 drones pierced Moscow's defenses. Fires erupted through the capital's core. Traffic lights died in unison, subways filled with smoke, and emergency channels went dark. Russian television showed burning wreckage, claiming victory even as the city's heart was collapsing from within. What began as a whisper in Kyiv, a daring act of defiance, had turned into the most sophisticated drone assault in modern warfare, forever rewriting the rules of how nations wage war. Flames licked the mirrored glass of a burning telecommunications tower in Moscow, its reflection twisting and warping under the heat. Few inside the Russian command network understood the magnitude of what was unfolding. A swarm of drones, costing less than $700,000 in total, had outmaneuvered a defense system worth $500 billion. In Lviv, rescue teams clawed through rubble as sparking power lines hissed overhead. trying to save lives amid the smoke and ruin. Across the front lines, Ukraine's air defenses fired Buk and Nasam's missiles, intercepting many incoming strikes but not enough. Russian attacks continued to devastate civilian infrastructure. A schoolyard in Lviv was reduced to ashes, the sound of children's laughter replaced by silence. Deep underground in Kyiv, maps and screens illuminated the faces of young operators, some barely in their 20s, piecing together drones from hobby shop parts and discarded machinery. Each of these makeshift drones, costing no more than $150, carried code written by university programmers turned wartime engineers. The swarm they built could think, adapt, and reorganize itself mid-flight. When Russian jamming disrupted their formation, the drones simply regrouped and pressed on. At 8:42 a.m., a test strike confirmed the concept. A small cluster of drones navigated fog and wind to hit every target with surgical accuracy. For 6 crucial minutes, Moscow's command centers went blind. Above the city, fire spread through residential towers, displacing thousands. Emergency hotlines rang endlessly as frightened voices pleaded for help. Russian radar operators, overwhelmed by false readings, filtered out the drone signatures as harmless interference. Meanwhile, hundreds of drones followed the curves of Moscow's rivers and highways, hugging the landscape to stay invisible. The real destruction came when power substations began to explode. Shock waves rippled through the grid, tripping transformers in cascading failure. Civilians huddled in metro stations as the air grew thin and ventilation systems died. Firefighters battled through dense smoke, their helmet cameras capturing chaos on the streets. But Russian defenses were chasing phantoms, wasting interceptors on decoy drones, while smaller, smarter units punched straight through to critical targets. In Kyiv's underground bunker, the air reeked of diesel and dust. Coders finalized flight paths under flickering lights as 6 launch sites prepared for activation. Moments later, the hum of propellers filled the dawn air. Drones rose into the sky like a swarm of mechanical locusts, their silhouettes barely visible against the dim glow of sunrise. From the Kremlin to the riverbanks, Moscow's skyline reflected the red of distant fires. Russian commanders watched, silent and stunned, realizing their fortress was not impenetrable. The aftermath rippled far beyond the battlefield. NATO diplomats gathered in Brussels, issuing cautious statements while Ukraine quietly requested more radar and UAV support. In Washington, $620 million in military aid was approved. Poland opened its airfields to Ukrainian drone operations. A NATO report soon warned that a $2,000 drone had effectively rewritten $500 billion in military doctrine. Even as the smoke thinned over Moscow, its communication grid remained crippled, a silent monument to vulnerability. In Kyiv, engineers refined their designs, turning scarcity into precision. Russian broadcasters struggled to explain the chaos. Screens flickered as control slipped away frame by frame. Economic losses were estimated at $2 billion, with 50,000 residents displaced. Operation Silent Thunder had proven one thing: innovation could outmatch wealth. Imagination, not machinery, had decided the outcome. As drones wove through Moscow's streets, radar still failed to detect their approach until it was too late. 130 Russian interceptors filled the sky, all chasing ghosts. Civilians ran through choking smoke, while sirens howled through the static. In Kyiv's bunker, the final line was typed into the mission log: "Silence answers with thunder." Moscow's skyline burned once more. Flames reflected in the river, as generators flickered in hospitals and power vanished across the city. The storm had passed, but its echo would change warfare forever. As explosions echo through Moscow, civilians huddle in the dim glow of failing metro lights. Their faces tighten with fear, while radar operators above stare at empty screens, unable to find the faint signatures of the swarm. The drones move like ghosts, hugging highways and riverbanks, weaving through Moscow's heart unseen. When a telecom hub bursts into sparks, the city's voice collapses into static, and silence becomes its only broadcast. Far away in Kyiv, the operators sit before glowing monitors, watching every signal pulse across encrypted satellite feeds. Their focus is absolute. Russian state TV shows triumphant headlines, but behind the smoke and propaganda, chaos reigns. The swarm's progress continues methodical, relentless, while Moscow's streets clog with abandoned cars, smoke, and the unending wail of sirens. The drones shift mid-flight, adapting like living organisms. They split into new formations, outsmarting Russian jammers and interceptors with fluid precision. Power substations collapse one by one, throwing neighborhoods into darkness as transformers ignite. Emergency crews rush through the inferno, their body cameras capturing the raw terror of a city losing control. Blind defensive fire lights the sky, but it hits nothing, only decoys. The real drones strike deeper, faster, unstoppable. In Kiev, engineers stand in quiet awe. For $700,000, they have paralyzed a $500 billion defense system. Through the haze of satellite feeds, they watch Moscow's skyline flicker half fire, half shadow. Analysts whisper the truth no government dares to admit. Innovation has outmatched might. A cheap swarm has rewritten the balance of modern warfare. In Brussels, NATO diplomats debate their response. Ukraine calls for more air defenses, more sanctions, more resolve. Washington answers with $620 million in aid, dispatching new radar systems and reconnaissance drones. Poland opens its airfields, letting Ukrainian swarms extend their range and act both daring and defiant. A report circulates across allied networks. A $2,000 drone has changed global strategy forever. Moscow's metro remains crippled, thousands stranded beneath the earth, while engineers in Kiev refine their designs, turning scrap metal and recycled parts into weapons of precision. The war's future no longer belongs to giants, but to those who can adapt. On Russian television, confusion reigns. Anchors stumble through their scripts as live broadcasts lose control. Ukraine's appeals to NATO grow more urgent. The skyline of Moscow stands wounded, its towers scarred and silent. Economists count the cost $2.3 billion in damages, 50,000 displaced, and one shattered illusion of invincibility. In Kiev, quiet pride replaces celebration. Silent thunder, they call it the power of creativity defeating the strongest systems. Drones glide invisibly through air defenses, explosions tracing their victory in light. Interceptors chase shadows while the true swarm slips through gaps, striking at Moscow's power grid and leaving the city in smoke and chaos. Inside a dim bunker, a mission log records the operation's final line. Silence answers with thunder. Moscow begins to rebuild, but the myth of its invulnerability lies in ruins. Kiev's engineers, their confidence hardened by success, already plan the next generation of swarm warfare. NATO offers words, not commitments, a promise of consultation, not intervention. The Baltic states, Lithuania, Estonia sound the alarm, urging NATO to review its security framework. The battlefield has changed, they warn. Borders can now be breached by algorithms and propellers, not tanks. As firefighters battle electrical fires in Moscow, coders in Kiev turn scarcity into strength. And in the fading light of the conflict, the truth stands clear. Technology has redrawn the face of war. Moscow, once a symbol of unyielding power, now flickers beneath a sky of smoke. Kiev endures, its will sharpened, its innovation unstoppable. The world watches, forced to reconsider not just security, but survival itself.